justify terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. We face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things.
The deep end with Darren Lipscomb!
What's up, everybody? RevivalHouse.net here with another episode of The Deep End with moi, Aaron Lipscomb. And I got forever faithful companion here, Zach. Say hi, Zach.
What's up?
And we got a special guest here in, do you want to go by Riverman or are you going by your name on this one?
I'm always Riverman, my friend.
Okay, so we got the Riverman on here, and he actually goes way back with me. If you guys don't listen to our Behind the Mask podcast, which has been going on for about 7-8 years now, he started that with me, and he's been like my best friend since we were fucking kids. And of course, you guys all know Zach. Anyway, I want to start off by saying thank you so much for the feedback that we've had on the first couple of episodes of this. It's been a very, very nice experience, and always looking to grow. Still trying to develop the ideal format, trying to play with things a little bit, but keeping it topical and always keeping it transparent. You know, never want to put up the walls up. That's kind of the point of starting this whole podcast. I don't want to have any restraints. And you guys keep that in mind too. I mean, don't feel like you have to have any restraints on things, you know, within reason. This is a safe house, everybody. So I know how you like your safe houses, Riverman.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding.
I'm the king of safe spaces.
No, but anyway, today's a really cool episode. I've been looking forward to talking about it for a while, and I just didn't know how to quite angle it or where it belonged. But one of my favorite topics is the paranormal. And when you have paranormal, I mean, that splits off into so many different directions, right? We're talking about life. We're talking about death, mortality, heaven, hell, you know, science even. It's all sort of connected. And on the last podcast, we kind of talked about religion, and we kind of delved a little bit, kind of teased a little bit of that at the end. So I think this is a pretty natural follow-up to it. But anyway, so I think the best thing to do is I want to talk about our personal beliefs on it, maybe our personal theories on it, and even share any accounts, stories that we might have. I've got a lot, I'm not going to lie. Got a whole bunch. I don't really know your guys' history on it, but Zach, I'm curious, man, like what's your belief? Let's start with you. What is your sort of foundation with this topic? Have you had any experiences? If so, feel free to share those. What's your explanation of it? You know, what is your understanding of it?
I'm kind of a skeptic. So, yeah, I believe shit when I see it. So, but I did have like a weird story happen to me once as a kid. But like later on in life, I kind of explained it away. You want me to just tell you now, or?
Yeah, go for it, man. Everybody's waiting.
Okay, me and my cousin were like, my cousin Mark, we were hanging out in my old house, and we were upstairs, and it always got hot up there, so we go downstairs to like sleep. So we go downstairs. He goes, "Oh man, we forgot that blanket upstairs. I'm gonna go grab it." And so he goes up, and as soon as he grabs it, like, he hears, like, what sounds like a baby crying in a house with no baby in it. And, like, he grabs it, just kind of runs down the stairs. He's like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, was that a noise you made?" He's like, "No." And we both got freaked out. We just sat on the couch. We like, put the blanket over ourselves. Mm-hmm. Expecting that we were going to see like somebody walking down the stairs or something, but never did. But like, yeah, later on, I was assumed like, well, my grandpa lived there afterwards, and he was like, we told him about it, and he's like, it was probably those damn cats, because there's always stray cats outside fighting. And like when they fight, they make weird noises. But yeah, it also like, because when we first moved in there, there was a tombstone in the yard. And the dates on it was like really close together, like it was a baby. And my mom called her brother, and he came, and he was like a cop, and he's like, "Oh, we'll look into like records and stuff and see if there's anything about someone being buried there," but they never found anything.
Interesting. Well,
I had a friend come over once, and he picked up the tombstone. It was one that like just kind of laid there, and you could pick it up. It's kind of one of those flat ones. and he just fucking dropped it, and it broke in half.
Oh man, you're cursed.
And he was crying. I was like, "What's wrong, man?" He's like, "I broke a tombstone. That's got to be bad luck."
Man. You know, you mentioned your grandfather. I'm kind of supportive of his angles of trying to explain it, and I always am, because I very much believe in paranormal. Now, whatever that means, that's kind of where the debate is, because paranormal, to me, is just something we don't understand, right? It doesn't necessarily mean ghost. It could be science. I think it's kind of all of these different things. I would even include aliens under the realm of paranormal. You know, unidentified flying objects, things like that. But your grandfather, he tried to get logical with it and said, hey, maybe it's those screechy cats out in the alleyway. Now,
and when he said that, I was like, yeah, probably, because that made sense. I never even thought of that.
So, yeah, I mean, and now that you've gotten older, like, how old were you?
Probably 10, 11.
And as you've gotten older, do you find yourself thinking, yeah, it's probably the cats? But are you 100% on that?
I think so. But there was after my grandpa lived there, he moved out, and my uncle moved in there for a while, and something weird happened to him too the first night they lived there. You want me to tell that?
Run, tell that. No, let me. We'll stop for a second. Okay. I want to tell a story really quick because I kind of relate to it, because you had mentioned that when you found the headstone, you wanted to, I think it was your uncle, you said, to do a little back digging story, see if there was anything case related at that particular house. We did that too. And I'm going to tell a story that, Zach, I've told you in private before, but I'm going to tell it again for everybody here. And I don't know if I've told you, River. I've known you forever, so who knows? You might have heard all this stuff. But, I like to say every house that I ever grew up in was haunted, or, quote unquote, whatever you think haunted means. But it was just pretty much when I was growing up, because, I moved out, when I was still 17, and it ended. And I don't know what that's all about. I was always the new kid. We moved around a ton. So there was a lot of living, a lot of homes, up until that age of me, being an adult. And the only commonality with all of it is I want to say it's got to be my dad's side of the family. I don't know if you guys believe in that stuff, and I don't know what I believe. These are just kind of fun theories. But because when I grew up, there was some years where I lived with my mother's parents, right? My grandparents on her side. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. Every time I lived in a situation where my father was there, or we lived with his parents, that's when shit went crazy. So that's just what I like to think. But let's flash back to the 90s. I was living in Kentucky with my grandmother, and that's my father's mother. And we had moved there in preparation because my father was getting out of prison after a long stint. And that's sort of needless backstory. But anyway, small town Kentucky, Danville. It's like everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. It's like right across the street, you had the local mom and pop gas station. You had the brick and mortar video rental store. That's a fucking another great story. I mean, that kind of vibe, which is kind of cool. The house was really old. I think the house at the time was about 50 years old. And some people just fucking scoff at that. People in Europe scoff at that. They have mailboxes twice as old as that, other parts of the world. But in America, that's pretty old. So nowadays it'd be a lot older. But anyway, do you guys know how usually in a house or a setting, if there's like a quote unquote a haunting, there's sort of the cliche that goes around it where it's like a cold spot or it happens in a certain area? Okay. And that's what I'm used to, because every other house I could list off and tell you guys about kind of fits that picture, where it was a certain room, a certain vibe, a particular area. This house was special because it was all over. It was the entire house. And the mega hot spots were the basement. That's where we lived, my brothers and my mother, and the attic. And the attic was converted into my grandmother's bedroom. And I guess if you had to say if there was a most chill part of the house, it was the main floor. But even that, man, didn't feel good. So this house, you really didn't have much of an escape. Anyway, we lived in the basement. And to kind of paint a picture of it, it doesn't help. You're a kid. It's already going to be scary to begin with, because it's kind of like that Home Alone vibe, right? That scary basement. Mm-hmm. Scary basement. The fucking furnace comes alive and that whole deal. Well, the basement had no windows. The only window was about 12 by 12, and it was on the back door, which, was blocked by the staircase. So it didn't let in any light. So basically, when nightfall set in, it was pitch black. So we were already in this unfinished basement. We'd have to sleep there. Dude, my grandmother had this thing decked out to the nine and just creepy shit. She had an obsession with Elvis. She was at that, right age group. And she had these like paintings of the king, and he would fucking stare at you in the middle of the night, and it'd be like those paintings where the eyes follow you. Mm-hmm. And she had, she had this crazy fascination with owls too. She had like wooden carvings of creepy ass owls. She had owl lamps out. It was insane. And then she had this picture of fucking Buckwheat from the Little Rascals. And I'm talking the original Little Rascals, and with his big old hair staring at you. And I don't know. It was just a creepy basement to begin with. Anyway, so if I can sort of paint a good picture of this, when you walk downstairs to this basement, immediately at the bottom of the stairs is the back patio door. And from the bottom of the stairs, if you turn right, there was a little cubby hole, right? Just a little bitty storage area, very small. My grandfather kept his tools in there. There was like a little tool bench in the back of it. It really wasn't any bigger. It couldn't fit more than one person back there. And then behind the stairs was where we slept, was kind of our little area with our TV and all that stuff. And okay, I slept underneath the staircase. My bed was underneath the staircase, and when I looked up, I was looking right at the bottom of those stairs. Anyway, so this cubbyhole area was at about, let me think, fucking 10 o'clock, if that makes sense, from where I was laying. And anyway, in that cubbyhole, every night, this is where it lived. Every night we would hear this sound of rummaging in there. Like something was moving around and playing with stuff. And then we would hear a voice. And a lot of you guys might think I'm bullshitting, and that's fine. I totally expect it. We'd hear the sound of what sounded like a little girl, and she'd be innocently doing her ABCs and her 1, 2, 3s. A, B, C, D, E, all that shit. And every single night, like clockwork, and we'd hear the rummaging. And then every single night, just like on schedule, she would walk out of that little cubbyhole area, and I could hear it. We could hear it. I could just hear it. I was facing away from it, but I was the closest to it. And you better believe my ass was fucking underneath those blankets. Like, I didn't want to fucking I didn't want to look. My mother, she slept right across from me in her bed with my other brother, and they were in viewpoint of it. My mother talked about seeing it all the time. But anyway, we'd hear it walk out of the cubbyhole and then turn the corner and start slowly going up the stairs. And I'm underneath the stairs, so I would hear the creaking of the steps going. And dude, I was under my fucking blanket. I was like, la, 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 not happening type of thing. So that happened all the time. And so it was just super creepy. But that's not where it stops. I was super deathly scared of the attic. Now, I had those feelings in the basement, but that's where we lived. I didn't really have any fight in that. We just kind of dealt with it. But the attic, man, whenever I went up into that room, I felt like I was being choked by the force or something. It felt really bad. It was really cold. You felt like eyes were all over you. And I can't explain it. It's like almost like a sixth sense type of thing. Like, you don't know what it is, but it don't feel good. Anyway, our bus stop was in the backyard, and I would stand out there on the curb with my brothers. And every morning I would look up into my grandmother's attic bedroom window, and I would see what looked like a little girl peering out of the window, holding up one of the drapes, staring at me. Now, I'm a realist too. We already know it's common knowledge what's going on in the basement. My grandmother even acknowledged it. She loved it. She was super fascinated with it. Her thing was, it doesn't hurt anybody. It's, it's interesting to her. She was into all like those horror movies and the occult stuff. She was like fascinated with it. So we all knew what was going on in the basement. So it's not like, but at the same time, I also knew that, this could be my imagination playing with me, the window thing. So I'm looking at it. I would look at it for days. Every morning I'd look at it like, that looks like they're looking right down on me. It was kind of high up, right? But I was just like, man, that's what it is. I know it, but it's like, maybe I'm just seeing things. One day I had the opportunity to really face it and just double check. We were outside in that same yard, on an off day of school, probably a weekend. and we were playing soccer. We were kicking a soccer ball out in the backyard, and my grandmother pulled into the driveway. She had been out grocery shopping. Now, when she went grocery shopping, this is the only time she made us go up there, was to take groceries up there. And she was a larger woman. She liked to keep food at the bedside, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I knew she was going to make me do it. Dude, whenever I had to take anything up there, I would go up there, and it was like Home Alone in the furnace. I would go up there and I would run down immediately. You got the heebie-jeebies, man. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so she pulls in, broad daylight. I'm looking up. I look up in the window. I see it looking at me. It's like looking at us, holding the curtain open, looking at us. It's like her face is following us, watching us play. And when my grandmother pulled up with those groceries, I'm like, all right, this is my opportunity. She's going to make me go up there. I looked at the what I thought was the face in the window, and I said, okay, I'm going to go up there right now. And that's really what I did. I pointed my finger and said, I'm coming. No, I didn't. And I grabbed the groceries and I ran right up there and I took them up there. I wanted to see if there was something in that window that, was playing with my imagination. Like maybe there was an end table with like a lamp holding the curtain open, something. I went up there. Not only were the drapes completely closed, but there was no end table. There was nothing in front of the window. There was nothing around the window at all. There was nothing. And it was closed, completely closed. And there was nothing. And then I saw that, my fucking heart sank. I ran back downstairs to go look from outside again. Sure enough, it was back. And now it was clear as day to me. It was the hand in a girl pulling open her purple curtain, looking down and staring at us.
That'd
and I'm like,
fucking creepy, man.
It was creepy, man. And it gives me the willies even talking about it. Now, I got to tell you a story too. The middle ground was, like I said, probably the most peaceful, but man, it was crazy. I remember one year, we were on the main floor in the living room wrapping presents. I was helping my mom wrap Christmas gifts. Okay. And my little brothers at the time, they were 3, and you understand kids at that age, they're not wise to that stuff, you know, why you don't bring stuff like that up to them, right? Mm-hmm. Like if they don't know any better, there's no reason to talk about ghosties and ghoulies and hauntings. Just let them be, right? There's no reason to freak them out. Anyway, if you guys have experience with toddlers, you know that they have a lot of energy, and they have this thing with stairs where they just run up and down stairs. They can't stay in one spot or in one room. Are you guys familiar with that at all?
Absolutely.
Okay, especially now in this case, they were twins, so they were like compadres. So it's like you have one just sort of egging the other one on, right? They're just giving each other energy. Anyway, so we're in the living room wrapping presents, and these 2 twins, these 3-year-olds, my brothers, they're running up and down the stairs, these are the basement stairs, and they couldn't sit still. Anyway, I witnessed them both come upstairs, excitable, doing all their playing stuff, and then I think they're like chasing each other. I don't know what they were doing, but my brother, one of them, he ran back downstairs, and then I swear to you, 2 seconds later, he shot back up into the living room, white as a ghost, panting, looking at me and my mom and the other twin, saying in his 3-year-old toddler voice, "There's a girl on the steps. There's a girl on the steps." Mm. This kid, dude, they didn't know anything about this stuff. They were toddlers. That was like, that he was white as a ghost, man, pale. It was crazy. So I always got this image of him running down and just saw her standing at the bottom of the steps. I'm like, oh my God. So pretty creepy stuff. And I remember in that living room as well, there was one day, to me, this is mild by comparison to the basement and the attic, but my grandmother had this decorative shelf in the living room, and she had a lot of knickknacks like old ladies do and stuff like that. And she had on one shelf a bunch of ornamental antique, like figurines of rocking chairs. They're like miniatures. And one day they were all lined up. I don't remember how many there were, 8, 10. I have no idea. One day, middle of the day, afternoon, and let me preface this by saying that there was no windows open. There was no doors open. There was no drafts. I'm trying to debunk this, okay? Right? There was no drafts in this house. If anything, there's a lack of doors and windows. Everything was shut. One day out of nowhere, all those rocking chairs started rocking back and forth in unison at the same time.
Ugh.
And they didn't stop. They were just going crazy. And then on that same floor, my grandmother, she didn't help. Her house had creepy elements to it. She didn't help the situation. On that same main floor, right down the hall from the rocking chair incident, there was a guest room. And inside that guest room, it was hardly a guest room. Like, nobody could sleep in this room. It was just an extra bedroom. But when you open up this bedroom, it was chock full to the ceiling, wall to wall, fucking marionettes and clowns and porcelain dolls.
Mm.
Can you imagine as a little kid seeing that shit? Dude, I was more scared of that room than any other room in the house. And it was just purely out of like a mental thing. Like, I don't know if there's anything going on in there, but dude, I mean, I've seen one too many movies, and I know if there's something living in this house, it's embodied in that doll. Like, it's living in one of these dolls somewhere and wants to steal my soul. You know, I don't know.
What'd your mom say about all this stuff?
Dude, she would talk about it all the time. Like I said, between my mother and us, the older kids, and my grandmother, dude, it was commonplace. We talked about it. It was known. We had a haunting in a house prior to that too, that we just all talked about. The only people that didn't talk about it, we didn't talk about it around, was the little ones, because there was no need, as I said. Now, my grandfather, he was a skeptic, dude. He is this textbook skeptic. He lives in this house where there's all these things happening, but you could never convince him, ever. And I remember one day, man, we had this situation that was hilarious. Middle of the day, lunchtime hours. We're all upstairs. I think we're getting ready to eat lunch or something like that. We're at the table. My grandfather was in the basement in the cubbyhole, right? The home with a little girl. I don't know if she lived in the attic or if she lived in the cubbyhole or if she was splitting her time. She was like in both areas. But he was in that storage area, and he was at his workbench. Right? He had tools back there and he was doing something. Let me really get descriptive on how small this area was. When you walk, it's like the size of a closet. When you turn into this cubbyhole area, you turn right and it's as narrow as your shoulders. So like if a grown man that was pretty tall was in there, each side of the wall is like an inch from each one of his shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was all the way at the end of it. At the very end of it is where he had his bench set up. So he's all the way at the very end of this little bitty caved in cubby space. So I'm just trying to let you know that there's no space. There's no space for anyone in there. He's at the very end of the wall, enclosed. Anyway, he's working at his little bench or something, doing something. I don't know what he's doing. And apparently something ran past him and almost knocked his ass over. Now, like I said, he's facing a brick wall, and there's brick walls right to his left shoulder and his right shoulder. So you might be asking, where did this thing come from? Like through a wall? Who knows? All I know is this guy didn't believe in a damn thing. He came upstairs. We're all up there having lunch, and he just kind of looks at all of us and says, still kind of a skeptic, like, were one of you kids just downstairs? So he's even a skeptic where he knows damn well that none of us, even if we were down there, he would have seen us, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way he was in this little bitty fucking 2x2 corner wall. It's just not possible. But he is that guy. And we're like, literally, I remember my mom and grandma laughing at him. Like, basically, you had an encounter. And it was actually fascinating because he's the one that refused to talk about it or believe it. And he actually made contact with it because it said it knocked him over. He didn't fall down, but it's like it ran past his shoulder. Mm-hmm. And so that was great. And of course, I'm pretty sure a week later, he's like, no, it never happened. Like, whatever, grandpa. Like, this is how skeptics are. But that house was insane, man. And there's a funny piggyback to this because when we moved, my older brother, I have one older brother. I'm technically the second oldest of 10 kids, believe it or not, for those that don't know. And I have one older brother, and at that time when we moved, he basically, I'm not going to get into the drama of it all, but he basically stayed behind. And he stayed with my grandparents. And we were raised in two completely different paths. It was kind of like a Prince and the Pauper type of story. He was raised by an only child by my grandparents who had the money and things to just totally spoil him, send him to college, the whole deal. And we kind of went off and lived as a big family, kind of struggling. You know, a lot of responsibilities and things like that. So totally different thing. I didn't talk to my brother for years and years and years and years and years. It was really kind of a divorce, like a family divorce type situation. But he grew up in that house for the rest of his late high school years and things like that. But anyway, one year, in the age of social media and things like that, I reconnected with him. I reached out and I found him. We just grew up separate ways, and we just kind of, it was just a weird thing. But I reached out to him, kind of extended the olive branch and be like, hey man, we were kids last time. You know, it's like we're adults now. Let's hang out. Let's get to know each other. And it turns out he was living in St. Louis at the time, and I was living in Springfield, Missouri. So, and that was just, this was in Kentucky. I thought he was still in Kentucky. So I was like, oh my gosh, the stars are aligning. And I remember I was coming back from Europe or something, and I had purposely decided to fly through St. Louis. And I said, hey man, I'm going to fly through St. Louis. Would you want to have dinner? Would you want to meet up, have dinner, maybe just spend the night together or whatever? And, you know, maybe if things go okay, you can actually drive me home to Springfield and you can see mom and, you know, start mending those fences. Anyway, that's kind of a side story. But anyway, so when I was with him that one night, picked me up from the airport, went out to a bar or something. He had some drinks and I slipped over at his place. When we were like laying and trying to sleep, we started talking about the house. That's the first thing I wanted to ask him out of all those years. I'm like, man, I got to ask you, you lived in that house for so many years. What else happened? And he was just biting his tongue, man. I mean, you couldn't hold him back. And I know this is kind of a secondhand story because this is his story, right? I was not living there, but these are coming from his mouth. But like I said, if they're to be believed, they're pretty crazy. He told me this crazy story. After we left, the basement kind of became his bedroom, all to himself, right? That basement. Mm-hmm. And he said one day, he was like varsity football or something. I don't know. He was a senior high school football. He comes home from football practice and he just entered the basement through the basement door I told you about. It was like his own little apartment down there. And do you guys know when you guys get home from a long day, sometimes you sit down thinking you're going to take off your shoes and relax, watch TV, and you accidentally fall asleep? Mm-hmm. It's just like, what happened? Okay, so that's basically what happened to him. He goes, okay, so I get home, I go in there, I sit in my favorite chair thinking I'm just going to unwind for a little bit. Next thing I know, I'm waking up like I'd fallen asleep for hours. And in between the time that I made it home and then I fell asleep and I woke up, nightfall had set in. So I told you about this basement. There was no windows. And once the sun goes down, if you don't have a light on, it is pitch black. Put your hand over your eyes. That is how dark it is. It is creepy. Anyway, so he made the mistake of coming home when, you know, sunlight was still somewhat rearing its head, didn't have any lights on, and he woke up to pitch blackness. He woke up, opened his eyes to pitch blackness, and which is already kind of a isolating feeling as it is. But he's sitting on his chair, he says, in the total pitch dark, and then he feels about an inch from the left side of his face, breathing and panting on him. And then when he reacts, like, what the fuck, it runs off. In the pitch darkness, he hears whatever it is scurry off into the basement.
Ugh.
And that fucking sends shivers down my spine. Mm-hmm. That's not. And then one more story. He said there was another time I come home on a Friday night and our grandparents were going out of town. They were going into like Louisville or something, 4 hours away. They were out of town for the weekend. So, and he said, I knew that. So I come home, I have the whole place to myself for the entire weekend. I come home, I'm on the main floor, I'm cooking dinner, and I go to take a shower. There was a bathroom and a shower on the main floor right next to the doll room, by the way. Ugh. Anyway, he's like, I was in the shower, and it's one of those showers that's a tub. It's a tub with a pull curtain, right? Older. And I'm in there, he says. I'm in the shower, and then right outside of the curtain in the bathroom, I hear a just blood-curdling scream from like a girl. And he freaks out. He's like, he said he freaked out. And can you imagine how that feels? Like, it's one of those things where like, I really want to get the fuck out of here, but I don't want to open the curtain. Mm-hmm. You're standing there naked. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to be here, but I don't want to go out there. He said when he finally got the nerve to get out of there, first thing he did was call my grandparents. He rung them up and said, hey, where are you guys? And sure enough, they confirmed, yeah, we're in Louisville. So there was nobody in that house.
That'd be me. Like, if I was a ghost, I just want to fuck with people.
My goodness, man. Gave me shivers up my spine. Anyway, fun story to kind of piggyback what you were saying, though, about the information on the case. You know, you're kind of looking at possible histories and things like that. He informed me that as he got older, it was a small town, man. Everybody knew everybody. But when he got to be like 17, 18, he realized that everybody in that small town knew about that house. Mm-hmm. Right? Once you got a little older, you started befriending and knowing more adults and things like that. Yeah, everybody knew about it, and he had done research on it. And I guess, funny enough, man, what happened was there was a family, and they had a small daughter that died in that house. Mm. And I think he said she was a young girl, and she drowned or something in a bathtub or something. I don't know. I can't quite remember that part, but that's crazy stuff, man. That's absolutely insane. But
we should all go to that house and do a live episode there.
I know we should do like Zach Bagans, man, do a Ghost Adventures episode. But dude, they still live there. They still live in that house, and it's never caused any physical harm. Like I said, my grandmother's fascinated with it. The only thing that I also think is funny, it could be a total coincidence, but I guess as far as they know, and as far as their information led them to believe, every family that lived in that house sort of went through divorce. Some kind of like family turmoil and separation. And that could be a coincidence because, 50% of marriages, they say, end in divorce. But it's funny, man, because that's what happened, man. That's what happened as soon as my dad got out of prison, man. Dude, he fucking shit went awry. And our family separated. That's the reason why we left. And we left my brother there, and we went back to Nebraska. My grandparents who lived there for the first time in their entire marriage, they separated. They almost got divorced. It's just kind of interesting. But that story blows me away, man. And there's something creepy about small towns. Small towns just have creepy history to me. But I got a whole bunch of other stories, but I'm kind of interested what your opinion is on that stuff. I mean, River, you haven't spoken yet. What do you think about a story like that?
You know what? I used to be, I've been back and forth. I've been skeptic, and also I've believed in a lot of things. I started out believing, like I watched like all the ghost shows. When I was a little kid, I started watching Unsolved Mysteries, and that kind of got me into the paranormal. And I always thought I saw things. I thought I heard things, but I never really 100% sure I did. So later I kind of got into the ghost shows. My wife and I've been with her for 11 years now. We got kind of into the paranormal and stuff, and we're always fascinated by it. We never really came across anything, but I don't know. Recently, my mom died about 8 months ago. She died on my birthday. She had cancer for 5 years. So she was in and out of remission and stuff, and in hospice, and then she passed away. And then it was kind of weird because we had her funeral, and then this kind of leads into my story. I haven't talked about this to anybody yet, and I don't know. I was kind of mentioning to you earlier that maybe it'd be kind of good to just say it out loud,
Yeah,
but,
for sure, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so we went into the church. It was kind of like a makeshift church, kind of a traveling church that she went to with all her friends and everything. Went in there, and I gave her eulogy and everything. And halfway through the service, he was at the time 7-month-old son started crying and going crazy, and so my wife ended up taking him out of the service in the middle of it because he was just, he was all sorts of fussing and stuff like that, which is normal, you take him out. So she takes him out into the room next door from the actual chapel area. So she takes him in there, and then he's crying, inconsolable and all that stuff. 2 minutes later, he's fine. He's laughing. And this just comes out of nowhere, like he's staring at a ghost, that sort of thing. And I don't know if I believe this. This is coming from my wife, which she wouldn't tell me this unless she actually believed something happened. But all of a sudden he just started laughing and started looking off into space, which I thought was kind of odd. And then she told me that after that happened, there was a door 4 feet away from her opened and then closed. So, it really freaked her out, and she didn't want to tell me because the second we left the service, she's like, I really don't want to tell you this. This is, I feel bad even mentioning this to you, but I figured you should know about this. And I'm like, I thought it was really cool. I don't know what it was or whatever, but
comforting. A little comforting.
It's something she wouldn't make up. Especially in the moment. I mean, it's very, not the time or place to actually make something like that up. So I totally believe her. And she's not one to just, make up stories like that. But the fact
especially on a day like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that, he was bawling and then he started like laughing at nothing and just like, I don't know, he was fine. And then she saw a door open and close by itself. I mean, nobody's there. Just kind of blew my mind. I thought it was kind of a fun story to relay to you about that.
And and you hear about that all the time, the concept of children being able to see things that adults can't, and animals and things. What's your opinion on that? Because I have an experience with a dog. We've all seen, I don't know if we've all seen it, but dude, I mean, I'll kind of seg into another little story. I was living in Millard, Nebraska, and we had a dog, and I lived in the basement yet again. That was my room, and there was something in that basement. Nothing was as heavy as the house in Kentucky, so I was pretty much a pro. Not a whole lot scared me at that point, but it was in the laundry room, man. I'd go to sleep, and it was more than just like creakiness in a house and noises. There was a laundry room. So this isn't relevant to anybody listening at home, but Riverman, our friend Travis, same model. The house was cookie cutter. It was a tract home. It looked just like Trav's.
Split level, yeah.
Yep, it looked just like Trav's. You know how there's that laundry room that connected to the basement? Okay, same thing. So we had that little laundry room area, and we'd be sleeping. Dude, I would hear stuff in that room all night long. And it was not like creaky noise stuff, because this is not stuff you'd hear during the day. It was like moving around, rummaging. It was really weird. And my dog, he would go absolute batshit crazy in there during the day. I'd come home from school, and he'd be in that laundry room in the corner, just barking and mad, like almost foaming at the mouth. And I know what you could say, like maybe there's like a bug or something or a spy. No, there's nothing, dude. Like this dog, it was not, you try and pull him away and he's just like on this thing, like it's a stranger in the corner, right? Like an intruder. And I cannot explain what that was all about. One day he did the same thing. There was one time, it was always in the laundry room, but there was one time where he was doing it actually in the main basement room, like right outside of it in the corner of the wall. He was just doing it. He was growling. And, so I always thought that was interesting. I don't know what the significance is about animals, children. I don't know, man. I don't know what to believe. I don't know. I mean, it might be the fun theory to think it's the innocence of children. Who knows what any of that stuff is, but I just think it's interesting. And like you said, you used to not necessarily believe that stuff. Now you're open to it. I'm not saying that what I experienced is one thing or another. I'm totally open-minded. To piggyback on the episode that we had, I keep saying piggyback a lot. That's like my word of the day. But the last episode we were talking about religion, Zach was on that one. Same thing. It's like, I believe in God, but there's a lot of point A to point B that I'm totally open-minded on how it is, right? I'm not going to tell you straight up that, oh, well, this is this, or this is a parable for this, or no, it's actually literal in the text. I'm just going to say I don't know. And I don't. I'm open-minded to a lot of different things. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're talking about A to Z, I'm at Z. How I get to Z might be a little bit different than your route. I don't know. But regardless, so it's funny though, in that same house, I'll tell you, this is a really mini one, but in that same basement, man, I had this really weird experience. And I believe that sometimes this stuff, you could say it's spiritual, but I think sometimes it is like down to science, I think paranormal and it's just unknown. I think a lot of it could be just like scientifically explained and we just don't know about it. And some of it, like you watch those ghost shows, right? Ghost Adventures and all that stuff. We talked about that. Okay. They talk about it all the time. There's two different types of spirits, right? There's the residual and there's the intelligent. And I think on one episode, they even talked about, it was when they were in Scottsdale and they were going through the tunnels. Do you remember that? No, not Scottsdale. I'm sorry. Scotland. Not Scottsdale.
Yeah.
Okay. There was somebody on that show, and I'm not a scientist, so there's no way I can relay it the way they did. But basically, there was multiple, hauntings in these tunnels, and a lot of them, they were saying were residual. There was somebody on the show that had a fun explanation. And it sounded nice, but they were like, yeah, man, residual, it's almost like a movie. These walls are loaded with quartz. And they were talking about how quartz relates to old school photography and the technology behind photo taking. And they're like, it's almost like a movie playing and energy and stuff. I know I sound stupid when I try and explain it, but I'm like, whatever it was a cool theory. I believe that maybe the residual stuff is like energy, stored energy and things like that.
A picture that's taken and keeps playing or something.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's fun to think that the residual stuff is kind of like down to more of a scientific thing, but the intelligent stuff could be otherworldly, because I do believe in the intelligent stuff, the call and response, the physical stuff. That's a little different. But anyway, this little event that happened in the same house that I'm telling you about now in Millard, this one might be down to science. I have no idea, dude. It was the weirdest thing. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. But we were in this basement, and there was one window in the basement, but to kind of paint it didn't let a lot of light in to begin with. It was nighttime, and in front of this window, there was 2 big bushes, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of light getting in anyway, but it was at night, and I lived on a cul-de-sac. So there wasn't any, but just to sort of enhance the experience, because we were going to play a game. Me and my brothers got underneath a giant quilt, and we would play this game called Caterpillar. Right? I'd play with my little brothers, and we'd turn off all the lights, and we'd put a blanket over our heads, and we'd just walk around in the pitch black. I don't know why we thought this was fun after living in Kentucky, but
I did something like that too when I was a kid.
But anyway, but like I said, there was already no light coming in to begin with. But just to, like I said, be foolproof, I would take my comforter. I had a dark black comforter, and I put it over the window to just eliminate anything. It was, once again, put a hand over your eyes, and that's how dark it was. And cul-de-sac, no traffic coming out. Anyway, so we're walking, and we're just going through in the dark like a bunch of idiots. And then at one point, the blanket comes off me. Like, I don't know, somebody's foot dragged it off or whatever, but it was pitch black. And out of nowhere, the whole room lit up in infrared color. Like a dark room, like where you develop film. It just swelled. And that's the way I like to describe it. This red light just swelled up and filled the whole room, and then it swelled back down. Lasted all of like 2 seconds maybe. And I have no idea what that was all about. And people I've told that story to, they're like, well, maybe it was a car driving down your street and it was like their headlights. I'm like, dude.
Was it like an actual light source, or was it more like your eyes adjusting?
No, it was a light source. And people try and say the car lights or the brake lights or something, like headlights or something driving out of the cul-de-sac. I'm like, no, you don't understand. First of all, there was bushes in front of this window. Like, light never came in anyway, but we also had a dark comforter. And even if the window was totally open and I went out there and I fucking yanked those bushes from the ground myself, this is not, what a car passing by that lights in your house and you're in your room. This is not that. It was pitch black. And I'm telling you, it was like there was red light bulb in the room. It was lit up. The room lit up in an infrared, dark room type color, and then it swelled back down. Am I painting a good enough picture? Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And then it was gone. And I have no idea what that was. Now, keep in mind, this is that same basement where the dog was barking, and I heard the things, and I have no idea if there's any correlation, but that's always stuck with me because I just did not understand it. But yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. But I think, like I said, I'm totally open-minded that there's scientific stuff too. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily run and assume, spooky ghosts all the time.
I'm the same way. Absolutely. I just find it fascinating, interesting.
Yeah, like I watch, like, even if I'm watching a show where they're talking about a ghost story, even if I'm just like, I'm not buying these guys' stories, I'll still enjoy it. Like, it's fun to kind of try to scare yourself. Like, when I was little, I'd read the scary stories to tell in the dark.
Yeah.
And now when I read it, it's like, this shit ain't scary. Now you kind of got to find scarier stuff to try to do it with.
Well, and yeah, I can understand that too. I think that's why a lot of people like the ghost shows, and that whole phenomenon was huge for a while. People just like to be scared. And I think everybody's just kind of like Fox Mulder. Everybody wants to believe because it's fun to believe, right? Mm-hmm. It's fun. Because to me, it's kind of sad. If you were to think, no, none of that exists. We've got it all figured out. Like, that's depressing, man. I don't want to have it all figured out. But I just, that's what fascinates me though, is that we are so many years down the line in our existence, and there's still things that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Riverman, you weren't on the last episode, but Zach, do you remember when my guest Adam and I talked about the Hornets, the Joplin spook light?
Yeah.
Okay, that's been confirmed. That was on Unsolved Mysteries. It's just a local thing where this orb that bounces down the street, this ball, it looks like the Good Witch of the fucking East or something in Wizard of Oz. It just materializes. There's this old dirt farm road in Joplin, Missouri, and it materializes and it just starts ski bopping, floating down the road. And nobody knows what it is. And there's been only 3 occurrences of this in the world. There's one, and it's always like reoccurring or recurring or whatever. There's one in Joplin, and the other 2 in like crazy. One of them's in like Egypt or something, and one of them's in somewhere else in like Asia. So they're spread out, and one of them happens to be in Joplin, Missouri. And my friend Adam, he described it the best. He says, he said he saw it. He said, that was kind of popular in those areas. So everybody go up there, and kids would get drunk and stuff and hang out and try and see the spook light. But anyway, he said what it looked like to him was Shrek, invisible. Like he was invisible, walking down the road, swinging a lantern. It was just kind of swaying back and forth. And that was the lantern that you could see.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say it's intelligent. Like when it doesn't materialize all the time. You be prepared to go up there and be disappointed and not see it, but when you do see it, there's pictures. Go online, man. Go on Google and stuff. And like I said, Robert Stack, there's an episode on Unsolved Mysteries on it. But go on Google, you'll see pictures.
I've heard of that kind of thing with different places. Is it always kind of like in a smoggy area where it has to be done?
I wouldn't know, man. I wouldn't know. I got to do more research on it. I do know that of the 3 locations, the Joplin one's the most impressive, the biggest and the most recurring.
I've heard people say maybe it's like, because a lot of them are smoggy areas, and it does involve like shining your own headlights. So people are like, maybe it's like your headlights reflecting off smog or something. Well,
these aren't cases. These is like an old like dirt farm road. This is a case of most of the people are kids sitting on the side of the road drinking beer, and they see it. Yeah, there's no cars there, but there's been accounts where people will drive down that road and it'll go right through their car too.
Oh yeah.
But like I said, these are accounts, and I just think, I don't know, that to me, that could be total science. Like, I'm not going to say that's a ghost, that's total science or whatever, but that's neat that there's something out there that we just don't know. It's just something. We don't know what's causing that, what's doing it. Mm-hmm. It's extremely fascinating, but so I'm one to kind of subscribe to both of them. But there's another time, man, not to blow your ears off with a bunch of my stories, but one time I was living in Florida, which, by the way, Riverman have a lot in common. We've lived in Nebraska, Florida, Kentucky. Am I correct?
Yeah, I did live in Kentucky briefly when I was very young.
Didn't you live in Florida too?
Yeah, I lived in Florida. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. We've got all these places in common, and totally just coincidence. We were living in Florida, and we were living in this little place, man, this shanty, and we were a 1-car family. My mother, since she only had the one vehicle, she would have to take my father to work and pick him up at night. And when she would leave to take him to work, she would take my 2 brothers that were there, because it was just me and my brother, who's like a year younger than me, and then our 2 little brothers. That's it. This was after Kentucky, so my older brother was gone, not in the picture. Anyway, so when she went to go drive him to work, she would always take the little ones with her, and she would leave us home because we were older kids. That was fine. And it was our job every day to kind of do our chores, pick up the house, clean up, all that stuff when she left. And we'd have to have it done when she got home. Anyway, she's gone, and we are cleaning up the living room, just picking up our stuff that we had in there. And of course, us being little punk kids, our idea of picking up stuff is, taking it from the living room and then throwing it in the floor of our bedroom, taking the mess and transporting it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I remember, and this house was super small. I got to let you guys envision it. Super small. The living room was tiny, and the hallway was, dude, I don't know, man, 7 feet long. It wasn't, our room was at the end of it. So if there was something in that living room that I picked up, I literally turned around, walked about 3 paces, and just chucked it into my bedroom, and I turned right back around, right? That's about the extent of it. And I remember there was my brother at the time was reading Stephen King, The Green Mile, and they had that one broken up into parts, and he had one of the parts, and it was on the floor of the living room because he had been reading it or something. And so I pick it up and I turn around, take 3 steps, and I chuck the book into my open bedroom floor. I turn around and there it is on the floor again in the living room. It's like I fucking threw it into like a vortex, and just reappeared. And I know people are going to think I'm absolutely crazy. I swear to you, I'm not nuts. So at this point, I'm like, I'm not scared. I'm just like, I'm interested. And my brother was there. I'm like, hey, check this out. And when I was with him, I picked up the book and I had him right next to me. And I walked back, took 3 steps, threw it into the bedroom floor. We turned back around. It was there again.
What?
I'm not lying. And we did this a couple of times and we were just fascinated. We were not scared. We did get scared at one point. So there was a point where we decided to rip it up, and then we threw it in the outside trash, and then we came back in and it was back in one piece. And then we said, okay, fuck this.
Fuck you. You're lying to me.
I'm not lying. I swear I'm not lying. I'm not lying. And then at that point, we both got scared, and then we ran out and we sat into the driveway and just waited for our mom to come home.
I thought you told me it was Amityville Horror.
No, you're thinking of my mom's story.
Oh, okay.
So it's funny because my mom, she shared it when we told her about that. She shared us with that story. She had a very similar story, and she told it to us. And this is her account. But she said when she was living on the naval base in Virginia, when I was young, man, I was like me and him, we were babies. So I have no recollection. But she said, he'd be working, my dad, and she'd be home alone in their apartment, and she was reading the original Amityville Horror book, like in the mid 80s or something. And she said the book just gave her the heebie-jeebies, made her feel weird. And she had a similar accounting. She's like, yeah, I kept throwing that thing away, and it kept reappearing in my room. And she said she burned it. She said she burned it and it didn't come back. So,
Really?
Yeah. And she told us that after we told her of this account.
Now, was there shrooms involved when you and your brother were hanging out?
No, man. I know it's a crazy story. It's absolutely insane, and you can not believe me if you want, but this isn't the kind of thing that I can forget. It was crazy. Oh, dude, in that same house, dude, on a different day, in that same bedroom, I had this karaoke machine. I loved it, man. So it's how I used to play my cassettes and stuff, because I didn't have CDs or anything. I had cassettes, and it just plugged into the wall, and I used it to play my tapes. And one day I was cleaning the living room as we did, and all of a sudden I hear that thing turn on at full blast, and it started playing the tape that was in there. It was the Ghostbusters soundtrack. It was actually the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack. And all of a sudden what was playing was this song called Spirit by Dougie Fresh, because the whole soundtrack was like almost exclusively 80s rap, like Run DMC and Dougie Fresh and stuff. Mm. And it was just weird. I have no idea what it was. And I went in there. Dude, this damn thing wasn't even plugged in. Wasn't on, wasn't plugged in. I ripped the tape out and that was it. I'm like, so that was just weird. I'm like, what is this? Is this something like playing with me? Yeah. The Ghostbusters tape is just funny. I don't think that's relevant at all. Like, it was playing Spirit, dude.
What if it's all just a glitch in the Matrix?
I don't know, man. There was something else about this house, man. I used to have really bad dreams. And like, it was the only time in my life that I could say I've had real night terrors. I know you've told me, Zach, that you have night terrors. Mm-hmm. And, dude, these were insane. I've never had such vivid dreams. I remember one day I was in that same living room and I sat down laying in a recliner and I was reading The Lost World. I was reading that novel at the time and I fell asleep. And it was just like Nightmare on Elm Street, where you don't realize you fell asleep and you're in your dream. You're still in the same place, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm in the chair. I had fallen asleep. And then right to my left is the hallway where I went down and went to my bedroom. And all of a sudden, I can't even explain it. I don't even know if I can really do it justice in telling you guys what happened, because it was more of a feeling. But all of a sudden, I just had this intense, gut-wrenching feeling, like I felt like this horrible aura around me. And then I felt like I heard something. I can't describe the sound because it wasn't a sound. It was almost like dog register. It was like a feeling more than a sound. But I want to say I felt this sound. I won't even say I heard it, but I felt like this sound coming. And then out of the hallway, right to my left, this black fog. I know this sounds weird. This black fog started surrounding me. And then that feeling and that sound just intensified. And I woke up, man, and I literally felt like I'd been possessed. My heart was just palpitating. I had palpitations. I was like, I threw up and I was sweating. And I felt horrible. I felt absolutely horrible.
That actually sounds a lot like people that describe having sleep paralysis or whatever.
Ooh, man, tell me about it. I really don't know much about it. I've kind of heard
like that. They'll wake up kind of while they're sleeping, but not really be awake or asleep, and they can't move and shit. Sometimes they feel like there's something sitting on their chest.
Somebody told me that. Actually, now you're telling me that. I was telling that story to somebody one time, and they brought that up. They're like, maybe it was like some kind of form of sleep paralysis, which is interesting. And I'm totally open to that. I've never had it before, though, ever. That was the only time. Now, people that experience that, is it a regular thing?
It can be for people that I remember seeing a documentary about it. There's some stuff about it.
I need to watch it, man, because whatever it was, like I said, I'm totally open to it being sleep paralysis, whatever. All I know is
it's completely different than like sleepwalking and shit. It's just like its own weird little thing.
I never want to experience it again. Ever, because it was just horrifying. It was gut wrenching, and I felt like, I don't know, extreme anxiety. It was nuts, man. But yeah, that's creepy stuff. I don't know.
And like for some people too, since they're technically dreaming and awake, like sometimes they'll say they'll see somebody standing there or sitting on their chest or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's weird.
So what about your night terrors, man? Where does that come from?
I don't know. It was one of the, like, you know how when you're a kid, or like maybe even still for you guys, like whenever you're having a dream, and sometimes you have those dreams where you're trying to talk to somebody in it and you just can't talk. You ever have those? Like you're trying to like talk to anybody, and it's just like, I can't say it.
Not me, man. It sounds. My dreams have a theme too. That might be a theme in yours. In my dreams, there's nobody to talk to. Like the whole world's abandoned, empty.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole world looks like the intro to Tales from the Dark Side. Remember, it was like all black and white and like.
I love that intro.
But you know what I'm saying? It has like the negative effect, the negative photo effect.
Yeah.
That's what the world looks like in all my nightmares. And I go out and I something's chasing me, and I leave my house, wherever that is, and I run out into the streets. And like I said, everything has that negative filter on it. The sky is gray. Everything's dead. The trees lack color. The cars are all empty. Nobody's in them. There's no people.
Well, for me, like around the time in my early 20s, I started being like, I can talk to people in my dreams now. It's weird. And then that's when people started telling me like, yeah, you were talking in your sleep. So I think like whenever I would try to talk in my dreams, it was like me trying to talk in real life. And once I learned how to do it, like anything I say in my dream, I kind of say out loud sometimes.
Was there, in your dream, a black guy named Kincaid that came up to you and said, "You found your dream power, man"?
But yeah, that's around the time I started having like night terrors too. Like, so if I'd have like a scary dream, I would sometimes wake up yelling and shit like that.
That's
like
crazy.
Nightmare in a damaged brain.
Yeah. And that's totally different than your experience with stuff like, because you have anxiety attacks, right, River? That's your thing?
I used to get those all the time. I used to be on a lot of medication for that, but I kind of kicked that, which is nice.
That's nice, man.
I used to get those too, yeah.
I don't want to have, man, sleep paralysis or whatever it is. I don't want to have those ever again, because it happened a couple of times to a different degree. It happened another time in that house, but it just never happened again after that. And, yeah,
I've been to the emergency room a few times for those. You always think you're having heart attacks and stuff, and you got to get hooked up to EKGs and all that shit. Yeah, but they basically just tell you it's all in your fucking head and send you home.
Oh yeah, what an easy paycheck.
I know, right?
So is that experience you mentioned with your wife and your boy, is that the only experience that, even if it was like an experience where you debunked, that you've ever had, or you never broke into like an abandoned house when you were a kid with some friends?
Not really. I mean, the thing is, I'm always looking for it. I always want to see it, but I've never seen it. I mean,
okay, you're Fox Mulder.
Yeah, I'd love to see something.
Oh man, I don't. Here's the thing, man. I'm so fascinated with it because it's the unknown, right? It's so alluring to me, but I also don't think I should meddle with it. I don't want to meddle with it.
Well, I would never do that. And I don't want to see it in my house by any means, you know, like if I'm going somewhere it'd be different, but
it's
Unless
like
it was like a hot fucking ghost.
Like Ghostbusters action.
Yeah.
Undoes your belt loop. But so it's like those shows. So I look at and I watch Ghost Adventures and all those stupid shows, and which, by the way, Ghost Adventures, I'm not saying some of it isn't real, but I'm also saying that they do make up for a lot of it with some fake shit.
Mm-hmm.
They have to. They have to keep the show exciting, and they're not going to find stuff everywhere they go. But with Ghost Adventures and things like that, you watch that and you're like, oh man, I want to do what they do.
Yeah.
That's why they're so popular. It hypes people up. It makes you want to be a ghost hunter, right? You all want to be Ghostbusters now. But it does. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, there's a part of me that wishes I could go into all those old haunted attractions, go into Alcatraz and things like that. And, you know, it's cool because you like to be scared. You like history. You like that stuff. There's something about, we like to have our adrenaline get rushed. But at the same time, I feel like watching it on TV or watching documentaries is good enough. It's like, you know
what's funny too is like with Ouija boards.
Oh my Lord.
I don't know if I believe that shit happens, but then at the same time, if somebody was like, hey, let's play with this Ouija board, I'd probably be like, nah.
Yeah, no. Dude. And that's a whole nother offshoot, man. I think, like I said, meddling with it. I think there's a lot to be said for trying to invite stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't. I'm sorry, man. I'd be interested to hear what your guys' opinions are on things like possession and, you know, the stories that influence like things like The Exorcist and things like that. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of shit's hokey, right? You have stories like the Amityville Horror, which is a total hoax. Don't believe that.
I believe shit like that could be possible. Yeah,
absolutely.
I believe it could be possible.
I think it's totally possible that a lot of people are probably just thinking they're possessed, and it's kind of like a mental illness or something.
I think it could be possible, of course, but like that is, just because something's possible doesn't mean everybody's telling the truth, right?
Yeah, right.
And with the case of the Amityville Horror story, total fucking cash grab, right? You know, guy murdered his whole family.
Except the little kid seems to still say it's real because they did a documentary about him.
Horrible documentary, and he's just like his dad trying to get a buck. That's my opinion. Maybe. But yeah, it's my opinion. So you have this story where the son murdered his whole family, and in court he was saying the voices told him to do it. Okay, new people buy the house, they take that story and they run with it because the movie that's all the rage is The Exorcist. The Exorcist was fairly new, right? And it was sweeping the possession was the big craze. It was freaking people out because nobody had ever made a movie like that before. They decided to cash in and make up these accounts about that house, right? And go off the story about the voices.
I think it's possible they could have just, even if it wasn't really happening, they could have just kind of been in that mindset, and maybe things, kind of weird things happened, and their mind just ran with it. Like, oh, it has to be a ghost.
So you think George Lutz really woke up every morning at that same time with the Indian drums?
Well, see, I think like
that's real vivid though. Like you'd have to be either on the fence or off the fence.
Yeah.
In the book too, the author could have really fluffed it up. I just choose to not believe that. I think it's a total hoax. And then the story with The Exorcist too. They obviously changed that. It was based on a story in St. Louis, actually, Todd Riverman. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah. The real Exorcist house is in St. Louis, and it was different. It was actually a boy, not a girl.
I actually got the book of that. I still haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I'd like to read the book, but yeah. I mean, what's your opinions on that stuff? I mean, yeah, could it be someone that's totally just sick? I know back in the day, it's like in the witchcraft and Salem witch trials, they think that witches. They think they were speaking in tongues. You
couldn't convince people back then that they like if they thought you were a witch, that was it. Like they were going to get to throw you in the water, and if you fucking drowned.
And I believe, and I'm more inclined to believe that these were like untreated illnesses. I don't remember which illnesses they said it was back then, but we couldn't treat them, and people would act weird, right?
I don't know. I'm gullible when it comes to that shit. I believe in demonic possession. I believe in all that stuff.
I do. Now, but is it because it's fun to believe it, or you also believe it?
No,
like, is it
I actually legitimately believe it.
I do believe it. I just think that some of it, it's not all true. It can't all be true.
It's not all true, but I mean, I gotta think the majority of it is true.
Dude, my mother, she told me this story about this time she meddled with a Ouija board with my father's mother. And who knows, man, maybe that's, maybe that account was the reason why her houses were always haunted. I have no idea, but this was before I was born. And ever since she told me that story, I never even wanted to mess with it. Like, no thanks, man. But she told me the story how they were at the Ouija board, and her and my grandmother, and they were doing the dial, asking it questions. And one of the responses to one of the questions was, they both said this, both her and they both accounted for this. They said the dial just flung from the Ouija board to the wall, like it got flicked, like it literally got airlifted and flew.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, you know, if you're going to believe that story, that's not something are you moving it? No, I'm not moving it. That's hard to debunk. Like, no, clearly neither one of them took it and threw it against the wall, and they just never messed with it again. I'm like, yeah, I won't do that. Mm-hmm. My brother, the one that's really close in age with me, a year younger, he's kind of the skeptic of the family, I'd say, more or less than anybody else. And one time, a couple of years ago, a grown man, he decided, he got drunk, and him and a friend came over, and they had a Ouija board, and they did all that stuff. And he's a skeptic, and this is in his apartment. And like I said, he was inebriated. And man, this is a guy who's normally a skeptic, and he was swearing up and down, like, dude, for weeks after. He didn't live in that apartment much longer. He only lived in there like another month on his lease, but he was swearing. He's like, dude, ever since we did that, there's shit in my bedroom. Because they did it in his bedroom. It's like, there's something in my bedroom. There's something in my bedroom. There was shit moving around. There's something staring at me in my bedroom every night. And it freaked him out. So it's really, really kind of refreshing to see somebody that would normally say otherwise be like, no, fuck, I did something bad. I got to get out of this place. Mm-hmm. You know, but it's interesting, man. Like I said, that's the whole thing. I do believe in that. I think if you seek, you find, essentially. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies just talking about it. And that is good. I wonder if that story about my grandmother or my mother might have conjured up something that followed them. Because do you believe in that whole thing where like spirits follow you?
Absolutely. Because
there's the stories where like a spirit will be attached to a location, and there's ones that supposedly they follow you. There's been movies about that too, and you've seen ghost specials about that all the time, where families move homes and it follows them, right? Actually, in the Amityville book, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't necessarily think is true, by the way, I think in the book it followed them. I think in the book, after they left the house, they went to a motel or something, and I think it carried on from there, and it still followed them. I'm not sure though, but I think in the case of my grandmother, it follows her. Because, like I said, her other houses were the same way. This one's really interesting. We lived in Tennessee, in Memphis, when I was little. I was really little here. I was like in the first grade, so take that for whatever you want as well. But this house, where I remember it very vividly, we would be sitting in the living room, and it always happened like clockwork. This would be my definition of a residual type of thing. But my grandmother had an experience that would sort of speak otherwise to it being residual. But in my eyes, in my experience, it was residual. We would sit in the living room and we'd be watching the 9 o'clock news. How do I know that? Because that's how I knew it was my bedtime. Right around when the 9 o'clock news was on, that's when I went to bed. But anyway, around the same time, we'd be sitting in the living room, and to our left was the hallway. It was a ranch style home, so one level, and left was the hallway. Down the hallway was, a couple of rooms, and my aunt's bedroom at the far end of the hallway. To our right on the living room was the kitchen and the patio. Every single day around the same time, 9 o'clock news, this man would walk from the hallway to our left, right behind us, and then walk out the other door. And everybody was so nonchalant about it because like I said, my grandmother was into it. My mom knew about it. And my grandmother eventually told me that it was her uncle, the ghost of her uncle. And I remember during those days, we didn't have any places to sleep. It was a small house. We were living with them, and there was kind of a lot of us. And we had our beds. We had these little bitty kiddie beds, those ones you like put together with the hollow steel frames or whatever for children, in that hallway where he kind of came from. And I remember not knowing any better, me and my brother laying in the beds in the hallway. and we would see out of our peripheral this guy walking down the hallway, and we always just assumed it was my grandfather, but that he wasn't even, he didn't reside in that side. But yeah, we'd see this guy just kind of walking past us every night, and we can only assume that's who it was every night. But anyway, it's very interesting. But my mother and grandmother would always talk about it, and they would, my grandmother says it was her uncle. She said one night, it all sounds residual because it would just happen like a movie, but she said one night, this is her story, that he was talking to her in her bedroom. He was sitting on the edge of her bed and like talking to her. I can't speak for her. That's what she tells us. So that's always weird. So who knows? That whole apparition seems to be totally different than the girl in Kentucky, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I just think it's always funny because this stuff only ever happened in houses that she was associated with, and my father, her son, was associated with. Never otherwise. But yeah, man. I mean, what's your opinions on that? Am I crazy? Do I sound crazy?
That's fucking crazy, man.
You can say I'm full of shit if you want. I mean,
You don't sound crazy to me. I've been hearing these stories since we were like, 13 years old?
oh yeah. Okay, so I've told you all these?
Hell yeah, dude. I know all your stories.
Oh, he knows all my stories. But, I think there's one you don't know. And this
about the photos?
What now?
The pictures on the wall?
Oh my God. Okay. Do you guys want to hear that one?
I want to hear them all. I like listening to this.
Okay. So, and like I said, everything after the Kentucky house seems kind of moderate. Like it was all reduced to like one type of occurrence, one room, things like that. Okay. So when I was in high school living in Millard, in my bedroom, as like a teenager does, you have your walls just littered with posters of your favorite rock gods and stuff like, you know what I'm saying? Like kids posters.
Like Sammy Kerr.
Yeah, like Sammy Kerr in the movie Trick or Treat. Absolutely. Anyway, one day, literally, my walls were littered. It wasn't even just like posters. It was like cutouts and clippings of magazines. You know how kids get a little crazy with it? Mm-hmm. Anyway, everything was as it was. I woke up one morning for school, and everything was rearranged all over the walls. Everything. And it was a lot of stuff. It was almost like wallpaper. Like, there was so much shit just tacked to my wall. And it was rearranged. And I'm just like, what? And now, could you debunk that? Could you say somebody snuck in my room and did all that? Sure you can, but I'm an extremely light sleeper. If you sneeze, I wake up. If you breathe too loudly, I wake up. And I'm sorry.
I think you did it, motherfucker.
You think I woke up in the middle of the night and slept
sleepwalking, yeah.
Dude, but this is like a lot of work. A lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of work.
Was
and
it like, could they have just peeled one off and then they all kind of stuck to it, just switched it from the other wall to the other?
No, they were all mixed up.
So yeah.
They were mixed up. Yeah, it was just like a hot thing. And there's just no way. Like, there's no way somebody did that and didn't wake me up and took the time and the patience. And like I said, this is one of those instances where I was just kind of interested. Like, this is interesting. And, you know, for a few days, I kind of messed with it. And I started trying to like put stuff kind of back where I remembered it being, and just kind of just wanted to change it back up. And yeah, it would keep moving. I'd wake up and it'd be all mixed around again. And, you know, after a handful of times, I just gave up, and, you know, it never moved again. So I don't know. That was interesting. I have no explanation of that. I mean, I don't know.
Weird.
I don't know. I swear to God, I've never drank in my life, so I wasn't drunk. So I don't know. This is stuff. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything with this stuff. I'm just saying I don't know.
That'd
I'm just
be
saying
funny
what
if
happened.
in your dream you were like in your sleep you were like, man, I wonder how my fucking room did that, and then like you were so worried about it that you were getting up while you were sleeping and changing shit.
Yeah.
Like if you found that out.
It was you the whole time.
Dude, it was the one-armed man.
All right,
dude,
I confess.
I don't know. And but there was one other story I don't think I've told you. I don't know if I've told you or not, but it kind of reminded me when you were telling me about the story with your mom's funeral, River.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I told you. Let me know if I did. But it's still an interesting story. And I like this because I'm not just telling you my accounts. I'm telling you other people around me. My father, which is funny because you never got to meet him, River, but my father was the biggest stone cold skeptic you'd ever meet. You know, he not only was he a skeptic, he was almost kind of like spiteful against it. Like he didn't just not believe in God. He hated everything it stood for, you know. But anyway, that kind of changed a little bit after my little sister passed away. And I told you guys on the first episode about this, and Zach, I told you about this, right? Mm-hmm. When my sister passed away, I think my dad, it changed him a little bit. It opened his mind a little bit to certain things, possibilities. If you don't believe in that stuff, maybe you can call it somebody that just wanted to believe that his daughter still existed in some way, Yeah. But he had so many experiences, and I mentioned on the first episode, and I told you, Zach, but there was that instance with the old coworker that hadn't seen my dad in years that had the dream or the epiphany about my dad dying. Mm-hmm. And he showed up at the wake service, and he said that he came to him in a dream. That was weird too, man. But anyway, before my dad died, so my dad died about a year later. No, yeah, he got diagnosed 1 year after my sister died, and he died about a few months later after that. But in the year since she died and before he got sick, him and my mom would both talk about hearing things in their bedroom, because she would always sleep with them in their bedroom. And they would both talk about it, like hearing stuff in the room, rummaging in the closet and things like that. And you might chalk that up to like grieving parents, right? Mm-hmm. But man, one day my dad, he would still never believe in certain things like that. They came home the Christmas immediately following my sister's death, the first Christmas without her. They would bring home Christmas presents for the little ones, and they would always keep them in their bedroom closet. My dad says that when he came home and he walked into his bedroom, opened the door, and then he went to the bedroom, and then he opened up the closet door to put the gifts. He says as soon as he opened the closet door, he saw a present in midair, and it immediately dropped. So he likes to think that was her going through the presents, because she always would. She liked to go through there and just like shake the presents and stuff. And this, like I said, this is his account, not mine. But that's what they told me. And I was like just blown away, because he's like the guy you don't hear that stuff from. But, then again, he's somebody that lost his daughter. But just the idea of that, man, is crazy. Like, can you imagine that, opening the closet door and you see, like, as soon as you open it, a present drop from the middle of the air, as if someone's holding.
It's crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff, man. I have no idea. And
it's like, is this a game I'm in? And that was a glitch. Whoever designed this game sucks.
Yeah. Oh, dude. I mean, after all that stuff happened, immediately after my dad passed away, my mom moved. She couldn't live in that house anymore, and she moved to another house. And she was convinced that, I don't know. You might think it was my dad or something, but like the lights would flicker in her bedroom and things like that. I don't know, but it didn't make her feel at peace, because in her bedroom, she eventually moved out of her bedroom. She moved out of her bedroom because she didn't want to stay in there anymore, because she said there's a lot of stuff going on in her closet that really scared her. And she wasn't somebody that got scared easy. But I remember going over to her house one day, and I'm like, what happened? She literally gave her room to one of the kids and gave the master bedroom. It's just like a guest bedroom, and she would just sleep in a different room. And she said, I can't sleep in there. And she would tell me all about it. And when I'd come over there, I'd stay in there, and I would hear some crazy shit coming out of the closet. Like, it was, dude, there's a difference. I'm one of these guys that wants to debunk. I want to debunk first. I want to sit there and come up with as many plausible reasons for something. And I know what a creaky house is. I know what pipes are. I know all that stuff. Dude, I was in this bedroom, and I'd sleep there when I'd stay over, and I'd hear in that closet, there was something rummaging in that closet, moving around legit. And it was enough it scared me too, man. It freaked me out. Like, I'd have to like sleep with the TV on and just try and drown it out, because it messed with me too. But there was nowhere else to sleep when I stayed over. But yeah, it scared my mom. And I don't know. My mom was always kind of the person where if she felt like there was an energy of my sister or my father, it would comfort her. But whatever that was did not comfort her. So who knows? Just weird things. But interesting stuff, man. And I'm sure I have more stories. I can't think of all of them right now. I don't know. The only one that comes to my mind, and maybe I can kind of close with it, is my mom had some pretty interesting stories. She needs to be on this podcast, for crying out loud.
Oh, before you tell your last one, I could just give that last part of my story where my uncle.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, so my uncle moved in there after my grandpa left, and we never even told him any weird thing about the house, but like the first night he's like, yeah, something weird happened in the house. So I was like, oh shit. So like he said, like they were all sleeping in what used to be my room because like the kids and everything, because like the kids were like all like scared, like, oh, it's a new house. I don't want to sleep in this new room. So they're all sleeping in the same room, which is my old room. And he and his son are sleeping on the ground, on the floor. And he says he wakes up in the middle of the night to something biting his leg.
Ooh.
And he turns around and looks. His son is laying on that, like where, like down by his leg, but his son's like, you know, turned around sleeping. Mm-hmm. And like he still saw like the drool from whatever it was that bit.
What?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Did you guys have a dog? That was
They didn't, no.
Jeez, man. There was thank you for telling me that story because it bought me some time to think of something else too. That one house I told you about where the grandmother's uncle, he would like I said, he'd go from one end of the house. Essentially, he'd come out of what we assume was like apparently he would come out of my aunt's bedroom at the very end of the hallway. Yeah. And he would walk down the hall, walk through the living room, and he'd walk to the other half of the house, which over there was a kitchen patio, and there was our TV room. We'd go in there and we'd watch movies. That was the TV room where there was like an old console TV, like a wooden console TV. We'd all sit in Indian style in there, and we wore out copies of Hook, 89 Batman, and like Ferngully and Home Alone. And that was like our playroom during the day, a movie room. And there was an old rocking chair in that room, and it would rock by itself. So I don't know if there's any correlation there. If like that's where he ended up, he like walked, maybe he walked out of the hallway and into that room and sat in his rocking chair. I don't know.
Didn't he have a Hawaiian shirt too?
Yeah, I mean that's what so Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and that whole deal. Believe it or not, and my mother could be more descriptive for you on it. But yeah, apparently Hawaiian shirt, very casual looking. I don't fucking know what that's all about. No clue. That's weird to me. And I don't know the rocking chair. I can only recall witnessing that during the day. I don't think I ever witnessed that at night, so I have no idea. But yeah, there was a rocking chair in the corner of that TV room that would just rock back and forth. It was really weird. But speaking of the clothes thing, I don't understand how that works, man. You'd think that's like a residual thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it did seem like a residual thing. But the fact that my grandmother claims to have had a conversation with them, I don't know. But the one story I'll say, this is my mom's story. Like I said, my mom needs to be on this podcast. But there was a story where at prom, my dad and her went to prom with a bunch of friends. They rented a limo, the whole deal, you know. And after the prom, they decided to drive through a cemetery because they're just being kids. I don't know. And them and their friends witnessed as they drove through a cemetery in the middle of some gravestones. They saw a apparition that was in the figure of a woman. It didn't have any details. It was like the outline. It was like a glowy yellow outline of what looked like a girl in a dress, a woman in a dress. And they said it was just kind of standing there. And the way my mom and dad would describe it as, my mom always described it as, it's like she was materializing. She was just standing there, just like a figure. Didn't have a face, just kind of looked like she was wearing a dress. She looks like she was made of light, and she was just kind of standing there. Mm-hmm. And that story always creeped me out.
So what'd your dad think it was, since he didn't believe in it at the time?
So my dad, he changed his tune. My dad would always tell me that story. And then later in his life, I remember there was one time where he started denouncing it. But at the same time, my dad did a lot of drugs. And
yeah.
No, I mean, my dad later in his life, he became super bitter about a lot of things. He was just somebody that his life went to shit and he blamed everybody else for it, including God. So he just became real bitter and he denounced a lot of that stuff. And I remember that came up. My mom was talking about it, whatever. And he was just kind of in one of his moods, a little strung out, a little drunk, whatever. So I don't really know where he stood on that. I'm pretty sure if I could have asked him like right up to his death, you know, after my sister died, he might have given me another answer, right?
Right, yeah.
But my mom was like, what are you talking about? We were all there. Johnny was there. Dave was there. What the fuck? We all saw it. It's like,
never happened.
Yeah, it's like we all saw it. You know, my mom describes it as like, we all looked at it. We're all like, do you guys fucking see that? It's like, yeah, we were all scared to shit. We all saw it. That's what he said. They all did. So who knows, man? I don't know.
Did you ever ask like your mom, like back in the house in Kentucky, like you were laying underneath the stairs, but they were like where they could see whoever was coming?
Yeah.
Did they ever
My mom saw it. Yeah, she would talk about it all the time.
like a little girl, like
Yeah.
could like make out features, or was it just kind of dark?
Yeah, it was dark. It was always a little dark, but we always
Yeah.
kept the light on above the stairs.
Right.
And by the cubbyhole. Yeah, and she said it was a little girl. She never got too detailed with it, but when my little brother saw it, man, he was convinced. Whatever he saw was clear enough to where a 3-year-old was saying it was a little girl on the steps.
Yeah.
Me, the only visual I ever saw of it was in the window.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And other than that, I heard it. So I was always facing away, but I would hear it. I would look at my mom looking at it. I'd look at her across the room when I wasn't hiding under the fucking blanket. But I would hear it, man. I would hear it rummaging over there. I would hear the voice. I would hear the ABC, the 1, 2, 3. And then I would hear her walk up the stairs. I'd hear her turn the corner because it was a stone floor. It was an unfinished basement. I'd hear.
Yeah, see, I'd want to sleep in that bed at least one night to try to see it.
Oh my God. And I would hear it, dude. I would hear it go right above my head. And funny story. I remember one night, I had to go to the bathroom real bad. I had to pee. And the only bathroom was upstairs. We didn't have a bathroom down there. And I'm like, if I had to go to the bathroom, I had to go up those stairs. And if I had to go up those stairs, I would have to come to a point where I was looking directly into the cubbyhole area too. Right. And I'm like, can you imagine being a kid? Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to look. I don't want to go over there. I don't want to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
And, so what I did was I got up and I pissed in our toy box. I just opened up the toy box and I pissed in it, and I just decided, all right, this is good.
You know what's funny? That greenhouse I lived in, where like back when the baby cry happened, I used to be afraid to go to the bathroom, and I was like, the bathroom and everything was upstairs with me, and it was just like across the hall. But I'd be too afraid to like open my door after a certain hour, so I would piss in the heat register. And it would make the whole house stink like piss.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
That's horrible.
And my parents were always like, "Why does this stink so bad?" I'm like, "I don't know."
I would play dumb too, man.
I told them years later that I was pissing in it because I was too afraid, and they thought it was funny.
Yeah. Did they still live in that house?
No.
Okay, I wouldn't care either.
The house doesn't exist anymore. It got tore down.
So when this happened for me, I woke up in the middle of the night. So my mom was asleep, everybody was asleep, and I'm like, I do not want to come face to face with that part of the room, and I didn't want to go over there. So I thought I didn't want to piss myself either. So I got up, I stayed on my part of the basement, and I walked over to our toy box, and I just pissed in it. And then I was like, all right, the perfect crime. I went back to bed. And, that's the story of a little kid right there. You don't really think about the repercussions and what comes after it. I remember the next day, man, my brother like freaking out, like, what happened to my coloring book? It was soaked in piss.
Did you ever tell him?
Yeah, I told him. I said, yeah, this is what happened. Here's the skinny.
Did he try to save it, salvage it, like put in front of a fan to air it out?
He let it dry and crinkle up. Anyway, it was cool. So that's just a handful of stories. I think I got like most of the good ones. Oh no, damn it, man! Here's my thing. I don't want this podcast to go on too long, but I keep thinking of other stories.
Yeah, this could be like a reoccurring, like
no
more ghost stories every.
I'm gonna tell one last one, then we're gonna close it out, and we'll do. This is very cool. In the house when I was in that same house with the pictures, right? That were moving around.
Mm-hmm.
I was in high school. And I remember I got out earlier than anybody. My little brothers were in elementary school still, I think. My brother right below me was still in middle school, and my parents worked. So I got home before anybody. And I remember walking down the street, and I could see my house like, 30 paces ahead. And I noticed coming up on my house that the front door was open. I'm like, what? There was no car in the driveway. Nobody was home. And when I went up to the door to kind of push it open further and go in, it immediately slammed shut on me. It immediately slammed shut on me, and then I heard inside the house like running, and I saw something. I scurried past the window, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And the place was small, and I ran around back, and
I wouldn't be fucking walking in there after that.
No, I didn't. I didn't. It was locked.
Yeah.
I waited outside till my mom got home a couple hours later.
Yeah.
That's what I did. And I know you could say it could have been someone that broke into the house, but I ran around back. There was, you just have to take my word for it that it wasn't logical. I would have seen somebody go out the back.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the way it was situated, and there was nobody. I'm like, I don't know what that was about. It scared me. And I waited for my mom to get home and we went in and happily ever after. But that scared me, man. That freaked me out.
What if a bum was sleeping under your bed that night?
At the time, I think when I was approaching it, I was thinking there's just got to be somebody home that I don't know about. There's no car here and the kids are at school, but there's just got to be somebody at home or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to go kind of just push the door open or whatever. I don't think I was as hesitant as I should have been. Just like, what's going on here? And like I said, it scared me, man. As soon as I went to go push that door open, man, it just slammed on me. So I don't know what that's all about too. That was just interesting. Who knows what that was? But anyway, this is a fun podcast. I'm fascinated with this topic. And as you guys can tell, you could literally go off into a million different areas with this. And I want to revisit it. Like I said, you can kind of go into the area of conjuring, Ouija boards, possession. You can kind of delve into the intelligent versus the residual. We just kind of lightly touched on things and then told some stories. So if you guys like this topic, let us know. Let me know. Share some experiences of yours. I love hearing about this stuff. I would love to have somebody on that's a listener sometime that would want to discuss their stories.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you don't want to, I will definitely read whatever you guys leave us in the comments and give our opinions on it. And I just like it. It's unknown, man. It's crazy, crazy stuff. Make sure if you guys are listening on YouTube, that's great. Subscribe there, like there, share there. But just know that we're on iTunes or wherever you guys like to get your podcasts. We're on all of them, right? Stitcher, Google Play, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Subscribe there. The podcasts tend to go up earlier there, and they tend to be, less neutered if that's a thing. Especially if you guys want to listen to our other stuff. We have the long-standing BTM podcast. It's been going on 7-8 years. So you guys can look up shows like that. Zach has a podcast, Mac and Zach Save the World. We have a few other ones as well. Or you can just subscribe to the Revival House feed where you can get all of our shows in one place. It's absolutely up to you. But if you guys are going to be on iTunes or Stitcher or things like that, leave feedback there. Leave a review. If you like the podcast, leave 5-star ratings, comment, all that stuff. It definitely helps. And I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten so far. But I think that's all we got for now. And if you guys don't have any final comments?
That's all I got.
Nope.
Okay. We're going to see you guys next time. On the next episode, we've got a special guest, a filmmaker friend of mine, who's got a lot of really cool insight on a lot of different things. Very unique life. He has a lot of really good outside perspective, holding dual citizenship. He's European and he's American, and he just directed his first feature film. He's a brilliant guy, a lot of fun to talk to. He's going to be on for the next episode. But until then, we shall check you guys later. Bye bye puppets. Adios. Sleep tight.